Check 1 2. Check.
Check 3 4.
3
hello,
4.
Hello.
5.
How's
Okay.
this? How's this sound?
I feel like it's okay, but I feel like your mic's fine.
Check. Are we sound checking or doing a podcast here?
We're doing a little both. I feel like my voice is better. If you could do something about your voice, that would be great.
I think my voice is more authoritative based on the information that's about to spew forth from it during this episode.
Well, we'll see.
If this is your first time tuning in, please stick around.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah.
I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Hold on. I got it. Don't say anything. Music advice coming at you. I have it here in my trusty Bujo.
Coming at you today, little traffic on I-44, and the temperature is 53 degrees with slight showers.
Yes, we got to explain
Back
to people.
to you, Peter.
Yeah, we got to explain what was happening. We were doing a little impromptu, de facto sound check.
Yes.
Because we're having some issues. Not really issues. This podcast is great. Let's you know what I mean? So it becomes very specific in how we can make
confident.
It even better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
we want it to be perfect. We want our audio. I'm even working on my posture. Have you checked me out here?
It looks good, man.
Well,
yeah, I've discovered just by seeing myself on the YouTube that oftentimes when we record, I'm like down like this, slouched down in the chair, my back.
These are very
arched.
ergonomic chairs.
I know, they're very comfy, but I do better, just as I do on the piano, if I'm not slouched back, if I'm have my sort of back straight and off of the bench. Yeah. So we have actually
a minute into this, and we've provided no. Music advice.
I'm not a fan of jazz.
No, it cut off a little too early there.
Thank you, Fred Armiston.
Yeah, for everything, actually.
Out of the Portland
area.
We just play the right note.
Did you know Portland? But we're all over the place today. We're like those cats that are
squirrels.
Like squirrels. Like, oh, look at that. Did you know that Portland? Speaking of Fred Armiston. Armistice.
Yep.
What's his name?
Fred Armisen.
Wait, it's nothing that I would.
There's not a T in the last name.
Oh, it was nothing that I just
first.
said.
Yeah.
Doug Laurie. That's all I have to say.
Fred
Armistance.
Should we start this one
again?
again?
No, let's keep going. Fred Armistance. What's his name?
Armisen. Fred
Hello.
Armisen.
How you doing?
Hey.
You're on the podcast. Somebody just walked by. Fred Armisen is from Portland. Did you know that?
I'm not a fan of
his name.
Well, I just don't know his name. I'm a fan of his name. Fred Armisen, great drummer,
Yeah.
former band leader of the Seth Meyers show. I'm thinking on my feet here, buddy.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Witty guy out of the Portland area. Did you know that?
Yeah, of course.
Well, actually, I don't know. He was on this show.
Famously, yeah. Portlandia. Yeah.
Right. Got a little quiz for you, Adam.
Yeah.
This is very important for all you jazz musicians out there. So I'm sure Adam is going to ace this, and we're going to get to some SpeakPipe. So I'm going to give you a SpeakPipe right now.
Okay, go.
Nickname for Portland. The city.
City by the Bay.
No, that would be San Francisco.
The Big Snapple.
The Big Snapple. No, it is not.
I don't know.
Rip City.
Rip City.
Yes.
Was it like a
I watched the highlight of a Portland Trailblazers game this morning, and they had that on there.
Rip City?
Rip City. Come on, baby. Portland.
What does that mean?
You never been to Rip City?
No.
If you've been there, you'd know. Those who know.
All right.
I've been there. Don't know.
Well, I haven't been there, but I've been in SpeakPipe, and we've got a lot of messages, man. Thank you, everybody, for leaving us a voicemail.
If somebody is new here and they wanted to leave us a message,
why would they? From the drivel that we've been
well, you're going to hear because our
the
listeners
first 4 minutes.
Our listeners inspire us, which they're about to do. You would go to you'llhearit.com.
Yeah.
And you can leave us a SpeakPipe, which is just a voice message. And look, you can retake it as many times as you want, so don't be nervous as you're doing it. We may or may not feature you on a future episode, though.
Yeah.
You know.
But we are going to feature Tommy J.
Let's hear it.
Hey, Peter and Adam. This is Tommy. I'm a guitarist in San Francisco. And I want to ask you guys one of the most basic jazz questions, which I'm sure you've dealt with on the show before. But do you think that jazz can grow too distant from its roots? So, I'm from New Orleans, grew up there. And to me, jazz was always brass bands, Louis Armstrong, big smile on the face music, which is light years away from the spacey end of the world stuff you hear on ECM records, stuff coming out of Europe, the cold parts of Europe.
Whoa.
And in a way, that's great because jazz has always had the capacity to absorb these different influences and incorporate them in this coherent, beautiful way, without sort of discrimination. But sometimes some of the stuff I hear coming out of Europe or, coming out of the universities, it just seems to me to have kind of lost touch with the heart of jazz. Not that I can put my finger on what it is. Even though I'm sure these people have all listened to, the classics. They know the whole canon. But anyway, I'm just curious if you guys can speak to this question of jazz kind of growing too distant from its roots. Thanks.
Well, I mean, we don't want to necessarily apply. I hear what Tommy's saying. I hear it, but we have to be careful when we apply it to certain regions. Although there is some merit to, I think, what he's saying, in my opinion.
Okay.
In terms of specifically the part has jazz strayed too far from being people music, what I like to call people music or folk music, where there's a direct connection with the music, where the joy is celebrated within the beat and the groove. And I mean, it's so hard to say. I'm just doing the best I can. But you know what I'm saying? Where it just makes you want to tap your foot, puts a smile on your face. Not that it's trite or unsophisticated, and it's nothing about that. But it's also not that it's so sophisticated. But I'm talking about music that connects with people anywhere, right? And I think that is one of the hallmarks of this music that we call jazz, and maybe we shouldn't be calling jazz. But what we're kind of coalescing around, one of the hallmarks is that it has connected with people from the very beginning, or just about the very beginning, with folks anywhere. And I think that is really, there's some commonality between all great art that can do that. They can transcend race and religion and region and everything. So then when I hear a question like this, and it's a little bit applying to people from here and New Orleans and cold parts of Europe and stuff, I'm like, there may be a little bit of truth of that on an individual basis or whatever, but I would caution us from looking at it as like a regional issue and making it more of just different movements and sounds that have not taken over, but taken flight within the music. And I think it is a valid question to say, has it gone too far from the classics? But the music needs to grow. It needs to be relevant. It needs to change. We can't be stuck in New Orleans 1918 to 1922 with Jelly Roll Morton and all. I mean, that's a great place to be, but they wouldn't, if Jelly Roll was still around, he wouldn't be stuck playing like that now.
No, but and also let's remember, I mean, this is a label problem more than anything.
Okay.
This is a framing problem, Tommy, in your own head about what expectations you have on the music, because at the same time of Jelly Roll Morton were people playing some crazy shit, man.
I know.
Already.
Right.
Already not toe tapping stuff, already pushing the boundaries of all art everywhere. There's I forget the Mexican composer who was a fan of jazz and Scott Joplin and made piano rolls that are insane.
Yeah.
Piano rolls that is unplayable by a living player. I'm gonna space on his name. If anybody knows, it's really incredible stuff. But it's around that time. It's around the early 20th century when all this stuff is going down.
Yep.
And so it was already being pushed. So I think it has, and even in the we consider the swing era, there were bands pushing the toe tappiness of it in the 40s and the 50s. People thought Charlie Parker was the death of jazz because it was too complicated, it was too artistic, it was too self-serving. People thought John Coltrane was the death of jazz because and Eric Dolphy and Ornette Coleman in the 60s.
Yeah.
People thought electronic music was the death of jazz because they couldn't tap their toe on it because it wasn't swinging.
Weather
right?
Report.
Weather Report. That wasn't not
Wayne
swinging,
Shorter.
not jazz, right?
Yeah.
So there's no what root are you talking about? If you want to go all the way back to it has the blues and it has to have syncopation and swing. Now you're just talking about specific players. That's I don't like jazz, I just like Thelonious Monk, which is great. Just like the players you like. If you're just labeling things and saying it should be like this or it shouldn't lose touch with its roots, which root are you talking to? Are you going to go all the way back as far as you can go, as far as we know? Because that's those roots are even spread out amongst different continents and different players that put importance on different things.
Yeah.
So it's a folly, I think, to try to say, well, this should be this and this should be that. Every player is different. I don't when I think about music I've been trying to get out of this, I like jazz or I like rock and roll or whatever. I just like John Coltrane. I like Thelonious Monk. But there are people that play jazz.
I thought you were going to say, I just like great music.
No, there are musicians who play jazz, a lot of musicians that play quote unquote jazz that I don't like their music at all. And it's not music for me. Right. And that's fine. And
you're not a fan of.
I am not a fan of, thank you.
I'm not a fan of jazz.
As a label,
Right,
because I
right.
do think it has this, because now all of a sudden you're comparing something from an ECM record in the 80s with Louis
From
Armstrong.
the cold parts of Europe, perhaps?
From the cold parts. But that's its own thing. And there are, hundreds, literally hundreds of people that like that kind of music.
Right. Oh, that's good. I got you.
No. But like, there are loads of people
Those cold parts of Europe are not as populated as you think.
I know.
Once you
No,
get
but
above
there-
Copenhagen.
But there are people who think that that's bullshit. And there are people that think that, did Louis Armstrong love Ornette Coleman? Probably not. Does that mean Louis Armstrong is wrong?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Wrong. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, okay. Absolutely. I know what you're saying. But now I'm going to play a little devil's advocate.
Okay.
You familiar with that game?
Yeah. Because I'm a little,
Let me
I
pull
got
out my
a lot of
penta-
coffee here.
Let me
so
pull out my pentagram.
Yeah.
I mean, just play the right notes.
That's all I'm saying.
You love those
Yeah.
buttons. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my pentagram and play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Okay, that's a
right?
devilish thing. Okay, go ahead.
That's a what?
Devilish. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I'm going to pull out my deviled egg. But this is the thing. So Tommy, because he's from New Orleans, I'm going to try to kind of connect the dots a little bit and say, just having spent a lot of my life there, almost at this point more than anywhere else, or at one time more than anywhere else, and say that perhaps, Tommy, I'm hearing a little bit of a connection with the musical tradition that is not unique to New Orleans, but it's unique to New Orleans, I think, in the United States, as far as I can tell. And that is this idea of like that there is a common musical language that is directly connected with the culture and the greater people.
Totally.
Like the greater culture. So like, it's not to say that there's more cultured people. I don't mean that, but I mean that the music and jazz is certainly a big part of it. Some people would say Dixieland, New Orleans music.
This is the problem with labels.
Well, yeah, the labels. I know, but I'm just trying to say be very inclusive in terms of like blues, the meters. Like there is a New Orleans kind of. I don't even want to say sound because there's many New Orleans sounds, but there's a New Orleans vibe. There's a New Orleans groove, and I don't mean just but
That is a New Orleans groove,
It is a New
though.
Orleans groove,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that there's even like with the classical musicians there, like there is something when they talk about there's something in the water that is true, and what it is a common musical heritage that is directly related to culture in a way that I have seen in other places around the world. Like Italy has that with like certain vocal things, not just opera.
Totally.
Brazil definitely has that
Totally.
with like samba and beyond. I mean, that's being like super surface level just to say that. But I'm talking about when you can like break out a song like in Brazil, certain songs, a bunch of songs, and when you start them, people start dancing and singing along. That are just normal people. They're not musicians or dancers, but they're doing that at a higher level than some of our pros. So like to me, that's culture. And so I think from New Orleans, Tommy may be kind of tapping into that and saying like the joy and the connection with the music. Since it obviously came out of New Orleans, it was born there. I don't think there's a lot of dispute with that. But when there's been these other contributions and stuff, traditionally or typically, the connection with the original spirit of that music, and he brings up Louis Armstrong, has been kind of unbroken. Even when you talk about Ornette Coleman, when you talk about Alice Coltrane, when you talk about Nina Simone, when you talk about Brad Mehldau. Now, I mean, some might look at that as the cold parts of Europe, but I hear that connection with Brad's playing with New Orleans. I don't even know if he spent much time there, but it's like, so is there a point where we cross over the line? Like, is Brad Mehldau as connected with the original New Orleans vibe as Nicholas Payton is? No, he didn't come up there, but he is connected with the music, I think. I don't know why I'm talking about Brad Mehldau, but I'm just saying, like, that's somebody who you typically wouldn't think of that. And so there are different levels to this. And I do think at times the music and the culture has gotten maybe too disconnected from not a New Orleans groove, but like that vibe. And New Orleans has never been so like obsessive and selfish with it that it hasn't shared it with the world. It always has. So there's influences and there's things that come with that. Having said that, I love ECM stuff. I mean, it's some of my favorite records. Do I love it all? No, not all of it. But to your point, it's like I love artists. I love records. I love different genres, different specific sounds and everything. I mean, I love Kirk Franklin, sue me.
Yeah.
He's very connected with the New Orleans vibe.
I mean,
to me.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that because of the success of the New Orleans vibe, because of the music and the spirit that came out of there,
New Orleans spirit. Maybe it's even more spirit.
it is the
vibe.
spirit of the culture for sure. But because of recordings, because of technology,
Yes.
and when this music popped off, which was the beginnings of technology, it traveled over oceans,
Right.
and then it's become its own thing in these other places. I'm not a fan of all this stuff either, but like, I can see how it's developed on an island out across the ocean as its own thing, just from sort of like word of mouth almost from these records, without a true connection to the culture that it came from.
Yeah,
and that does.
But that shows the power of what it is. Actually, the power of an idea.
I know, but it's its own thing. I mean, just like is Chris Davis connected to New Orleans? Is Mary Halverson connected to New Orleans with like avant-garde things out of New York? Or any of the avant-garde traditions out of New York in the 80s and 90s connected to New Orleans? Should they be? And should we? I'm just saying, like, if we're always just comparing everything to a root, then it's just we're always going to be failing because
like some kind of authenticity test.
It's an authenticity test, and it's always looking back for a should. Well, it should sound like this or whatever.
Right.
No, man, it's its own thing. Let it be its own thing.
You know what I always say? Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Come on now.
That doesn't mean that you have to like it either. You can just like swinging music that feels good and makes you smile.
Also, it has to swing. I see what you're doing there.
I mean, that's what I like, but I respect
you love swing.
I respect that my own personal boundaries are not everybody's. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying.
Is that swinging?
Not when you do it like that, man. You can make that swing. Oh, there you go. Yeah, accent it. That's swinging. Yeah.
So that's the vibe. You know. Tommy likes that. Tommy in San Francisco. You left New Orleans. What are you doing, man?
Yeah. No, but Tommy, seriously, I mean, it's a great observation, but I feel like it's a label issue more than it's a music issue. People are going to make all kinds of crazy music, and you like it or you don't. But there's no reason of saying like, well, because it's in the box of jazz, and that's a stupid friggin' label for all this stuff anyway, too. So
we never use that term.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what I'm saying, like.
Well, but think about this. The great thing, like, let's look at this from the positive side, is that regardless of like different strains or subgenres or whatever you want to call it, or different kind of sounds and vibe. First of all, it's a cool thing when there gets to be a sound from a certain place, no matter where it is. You know, whether or not that has followers or not, if it's small, if it's not, I mean, if it's speaking to people, if it's entertaining them, edifying them, you know, lifting their spirits, that's what art is about. It doesn't have to be for you. The thing of like, because Tommy did say, I wrote this in my notes, too distant from his roots, I would say no. Now, is some of this stuff too distant? That's up for you to decide. Probably. It is for me sometimes. But the beauty of it is there's plenty of stuff that is not distant from the root. Great music being made now. I mean, we have so many different great artists.
There's so much good stuff.
Our friend Anat Cohen. So she's doing stuff that's so well connected from, and she comes from a far, far off land, a very mysterious place, Israel. You know.
Yeah.
But so I mean, those connections with the original.
She's connected to roots in Brazil and New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the music is still there. Support those artists that you like, but don't do it at the exclusion of other ones. Just order the dish that you like on the menu.
I'll tell you.
If it wasn't available, like if you go somewhere and you're like, none of these original joyous connections to New Orleans music aren't available.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather go hear some cold music from ECM Europe that's tangentially connected to this than like, just some people in costumes trying to play New Orleans Dixieland music like they're like historians or something, I mean, they don't really have the spirit.
It's like what Heather and I tell our kids. You don't have to yuck on someone else's yum. Just because someone else is yumming on something and you don't like it doesn't mean you have to be like, ooh, yuck. I can't believe you like that. Yeah, people like different things.
Yummy. I like that little parable. Is yummy.
Don't yuck on someone else's yum.
Little Manus parable. We are brought to you today
by
Open
Studio. Oh, you waiting for me?
Okay. Jazz, we play all the notes. 12 notes of the scale, dipshit. Not 3 chords on a ukulele.
That's all I care about.
St. Louis's Afton's own.
Afton, Missouri's own. John Goodman. National treasure.
National treasure. Yeah, we're brought to you by Open Studio. Check in. Big things are happening at OpenStudioJazz.com, especially the Open Studio Pro program. We are welcoming in
we got tons
many
of
guitarists.
We are, yeah.
We're becoming guitar-centric.
Tommy's one of them, yeah.
You and I are about to become obsolete over there because the guitar program is, we're still
I'm ready
a lot
to
of
be put
piano
out the
stuff
pasture,
happening.
man.
We got piano, we got bass, and we have guitar happening at Open Studio Pro, and really all instrumentals, even the ukulele.
We found a bass player, Sharon. You want to hear Sharon's testimony here?
Yes.
I heard your podcast today for the first time, and I am in love with your podcast.
Hello.
I started off, I am a rock and roll bass player.
We'll allow it. We'll allow it.
I got to Jocko
I was trying to do old rock and roll.
Pastorius this week on the internet. I'm in love with his playing.
Jocko's good.
He's no
Yeah.
longer with us. And from there, I got to you. And I'm just loving learning about
Sharon.
jazz through you guys.
Thank you, Sharon. Very
Still
sweet.
will have my rock and roll, but
Appreciate it.
See, that's somebody that understands what she likes, and
Yeah.
she's discovering, first of all, big shout out to our female listeners. We are going to prioritize. We know we got the female fans out there, but they don't leave a lot of speak pipes. So if you are one of our female fans, male or whatever else you are, please leave us a speak pipe because we're looking for new voices like Sharon. Is
That's
that
right.
okay?
And
When you were looking at me like I was about to mess up, I probably did.
I mean,
but
you
you know
were-
what? This is a good time because we're at the end of the episode now.
You're tightrope walking, but yeah.
Is anyone
Yeah.
still listening?
Yeah, no.
Is anyone still listening?
Yeah, no, but until next time.
You'll hear it.